On a quiet night in October 1948, the sky over North Dakota witnessed a terrifying event that no one could have expected. Pilot George F. Gorman, a World War II veteran, was on a routine training flight to ensure regional security. But instead of facing an ordinary enemy, he encountered an unidentified flying object that emitted a strange white light and moved with a speed and acceleration beyond human understanding. The chase in the night sky that followed was unlike any aerial battle ever recorded in aviation history. One side was a human pilot, and the other seemed not to belong to Earth. The incident left Gorman with countless questions he could never answer. What exactly did I face that night? An advanced military device? Or something else, far more frightening? This event, later known as the Gorman Dogfight, became one of the most mysterious and thoroughly studied encounters in UFO history. To truly understand what happened, we must return to the context of America in the 1940s, a time when aerial phenomena could not yet be explained by modern science. In the 1940s, the world was witnessing an explosion of reports about unidentified flying objects. During World War II, pilots from both the Allied and Axis sides frequently mentioned the phenomenon known as Foo Fighters, small glowing spheres moving rapidly around aircraft, sometimes following them for the entire flight. At first, they believed these were secret enemy weapons. But after the war ended, investigations revealed that no nation had the technology to produce anything similar. This turned the phenomenon into one of aviation history's great mysteries, and it opened the first hypotheses about the possible existence of extraterrestrial life. As aviation and space technology began to advance rapidly, reports of UFOs also increased dramatically. Most notable was the Roswell incident in New Mexico in July 1947, considered the starting point of the modern UFO era. Soon after, the United States Air Force launched a series of official investigation programs to determine whether these objects posed a threat to national security. Among them, Project Sign, 1947, Project Grudge, 1949, and later, Project Blue Book, 1952, were the most important. Blue Book collected over 12,000 reports, most of which were explained as natural phenomena or misidentified conventional aircraft. The central figure in these projects was Captain Edward J. Ruppelt, who personally investigated hundreds of cases. Throughout his career, he regarded George F. Gorman's 1948 encounter as one of the classic cases where the line between reality and the unknown was blurred. George F. Gorman was a dedicated serviceman who had served in the U.S. Air Force before joining the North Dakota National Guard. He was not only an excellent pilot, but also a tactical instructor who trained younger pilots in reflex and decision-making. He always emphasized that in combat, the most important thing was not just flying skill, but the ability to make quick judgments and remain calm under crisis. Thanks to his tactical thinking and enthusiasm, Gorman became the ideal model for North Dakota's Air Force, a symbol of discipline, courage, and professional passion. Yet, ironically, his entire career would be remembered only for one strange and terrifying night. It was October 1st, 1948, a clear, windless evening, with perfect visibility, ideal conditions for a nighttime training flight. At that time, National Guard pilots often practiced night flying to improve their observation and responsibilities under low-light conditions. Over the city of Fargo that night, only 2 aircraft were recorded in the sky: a civilian Piper Cub flying low near the ground, and Gorman's P-51 Mustang fighter. The control tower confirmed that no other aircraft were in the area. Below, a football game was taking place at the stadium, making the ground unusually bright, which improved the pilot's visibility and accuracy. And on that peaceful night, the training session Gorman had been teaching to his pilots had just concluded. At first, Gorman intended to land after the training session, ending a smooth day of flying. However, the night sky over North Dakota was so beautiful, clear, windless, and cloudless that he changed his mind. He decided to fly a few more laps to relax, not realizing that this small decision would mark the beginning of one of the strangest encounters in the history of American aviation. While flying high above, Gorman suddenly noticed a small white light appearing below his aircraft. At first, he thought it was another plane flying at a lower altitude, but just a few seconds later, he realized something was unusual. That light was completely steady, no blinking, no identification signals, and, most notably, no sound of any engine. In the still air, it stood out in an eerie way. To verify, Gorman lowered his altitude. With favorable weather conditions, he could see that the object had no wings, no tail. It was merely a glowing sphere drifting in the sky. He immediately contacted the air traffic control station at Fargo Airport to ask if there were any other flights in the area. The answer was that there was only one civilian Piper Cub flying near the ground. There was no explanation for the appearance of that light. Gorman decided to get closer. At a distance of about 1 kilometer, he estimated the object to be only 20 to 30 centimeters in size, too small to be an aircraft, yet the light it emitted was abnormally intense, almost burning bright against the pitch-black sky. Gorman pulled the control stick, tilted his wings, and maintained a steady speed to observe. But just as he adjusted his viewing angle, the object suddenly accelerated, so sharply upward that his eyes lost sight of it in an instant. By reflex as a seasoned combat pilot, Gorman immediately turned sharply, increased engine power, and began pursuit. But what he was facing did not move like any flying object ever recorded. It changed direction continuously, seemingly defying all laws of physics, sometimes dropping close to the ground, then suddenly flying horizontally, before shooting straight up like a pillar of light in the air. Each time he tried to lock onto the target, it disappeared from view, only to reappear from another angle seconds later. He tried to keep a safe distance for observation while reporting back to the control tower. At 9:07 p.m., Gorman was about 5 kilometers from Fargo Airport. He asked again, "Is there any other signal besides the P-51 and the Piper Cub?" The answer was still no. The control staff added that the pilot and passenger of the Piper Cub also saw a bright object flying westward. Too many matching details made Gorman decide to cut across the object's flight path. At an altitude of about 1,500 meters, he turned right to intercept. When the two sides were only a few hundred meters apart, the object suddenly accelerated and shot past, making him lose sight of it for a moment. Immediately after, it made a 180-degree turn, dove straight toward him, and then soared upward. The Mustang lagged behind, Its engine roared but still couldn't catch up. Gorman tried to block its path 2 more times, but both attempts failed. Finally, the white light flew toward Fargo Airport and completely vanished into the darkness. When he landed, the clock read 9:27 p.m. From the ground, Gorman was not the only witness. Pilot Cannon and passenger Anna Nelson on the Piper Cub both saw the same phenomenon. They described the object as a small bright spot, silent, moving erratically. Air traffic controllers at Fargo Airport, including Ly Jensen, also confirmed that they observed the same white light, making abrupt direction changes several times. The testimonies of all witnesses matched perfectly, causing the incident to quickly attract attention. The U.S. military dispatched an investigative team from Project Sign to Fargo that very night. They interviewed Gorman, Cannon, Nelson, and the control tower personnel, and also examined the P-51 Mustang. The results showed that Gorman's aircraft had a higher than normal radiation level, a discovery that led many to speculate that the object might have used nuclear energy. However, Air Force investigators found no evidence that the object was an aircraft or a man-made device. They ruled out the possibility that it was a meteorological phenomenon or a piece of military technology from any other country. All the data collected still wasn't enough to reach a definite conclusion. Project Sign recorded the case as unexplainable, long with insufficient information, and this result left many observers unsatisfied. At the end of 1948, Project Sign officially came to a close. Less than a year later, the United States Air Force launched a follow-up program called Project Grudge under the leadership of Edward J. Ruppelt, whom we mentioned at the beginning. Grudge was considered a more open phase of UFO research, but its goal went in the opposite direction. Instead of seeking authentic evidence, the investigative team tried to minimize the mysterious effects, treating the UFO phenomenon as observational errors or natural occurrences. They re-examined Pilot Gorman's encounter and proposed the hypothesis that it might have been an astronomical phenomenon or a weather balloon. However, many scientists opposed this, arguing that such explanations were inconsistent with actual flight conditions. The object Gorman described was capable of acceleration, changing direction, and maneuvering far beyond anything a balloon could do. In the end, Grudge still could not provide a clear explanation, only concluding that the incident did not pose a threat to national security, and the object's origin remained unidentified. The two major projects, Sign and Grudge, ended one after another. Yet the question, what exactly did Gorman encounter in the skies over Fargo, still had no answer. 3 years later, in 1952, the United States Air Force established the third and largest UFO research project in history, Project Blue Book. Blue Book reviewed all his previous case files, including Gorman's. They assessed his testimony as reliable, as he was an experienced pilot with no history of psychological instability, and his descriptions were highly consistent. Some researchers within the Blue Book project suggested that the object Gorman saw might have been an unidentified meteorological event or a rare astronomical phenomenon. But this hypothesis was quickly dismissed, as it could not account for the object's speed agility, and sudden directional changes observed by Gorman and other witnesses. In the end, Blue Book concluded that the incident posed no threat to national security and classified it as unidentified. All three projects, Sign, Grudge, and Blue Book, though conducted independently, encountered the same problem. They could not provide a definitive answer. This is precisely what made the Gorman Dogfight one of the most mysterious and controversial UFO incidents in American aviation history, while also paving the way for countless speculative theories beyond science in the years that followed. Many began to believe that Gorman had faced an extraterrestrial being. According to them, every irrational detail of the event could be explained if the object was considered an alien spacecraft. Remember that in 1948, even the most advanced jet aircraft of the U.S. Air Force could not reach the speed or maneuverability Gorman described. Furthermore, all witnesses confirmed that the object emitted intense light, had no engine, no propeller, and made no sound, features completely alien to aviation technology at that time. This led to the hypothesis that the object might have been powered by an advanced form of energy never before known, possibly controlled by extraterrestrial intelligence or an extremely sophisticated automated device. This theory gained even more traction as Americans were still haunted by the 1947 Roswell incident, just 1 year before Gorman's encounter. At that time, the news of a flying disc crashing in the New Mexico desert had sparked widespread belief in the existence of aliens. Therefore, many believed that the object Gorman faced could have been a smaller reconnaissance craft used by extraterrestrials to monitor or study Earth, which he accidentally discovered. However, the big question remained. If that were truly the case, why did all three U.S. Air Force projects reach completely different conclusions? Could it be that the government deliberately concealed information? Many believed that projects like Sign, Grudge, and Blue Book were not merely for objective research, but were created to control and direct public opinion, aiming to reduce public fear about the possible existence of extraterrestrial beings. They pointed out that in many other cases, the government often ended investigations with vague explanations or attributed the cause to natural phenomena, most notably in the Roswell incident, when the Air Force initially confirmed a flying disc crash, only to later change it to a weather balloon. This led the public to believe that the government might be deliberately hiding evidence, such as images, documents, or even technology originating from another civilization. According to many independent researchers, this secrecy may have been intended to prevent social panic or to maintain military advantage if such technologies truly existed. Because, once disclosed, such information could shake the foundations of politics, religion, and national security. Therefore, some analysts argued that the government's denial of UFO evidence was not necessarily a denial of the truth, but rather a way to control potential consequences. Although this theory was widely believed, there were still scientists who maintained a more cautious stance. They argued that linking Gorman's incident to extraterrestrials lacked scientific basis, and to this day, no empirical evidence has ever proven it. By the late 1940s, tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union were rapidly escalating. The two nations had entered a fierce technological race to assert dominance in the skies. And coincidentally, Gorman's incident occurred right at that sensitive time, opening up a new hypothesis that drew much attention. Many researchers and conspiracy theorists believed that the glowing object Gorman encountered could have been a type of reconnaissance drone or an advanced flying device developed in secret. If it had truly appeared in U.S. airspace, it was highly possible that it was a surveillance mission carried out by the rival nation, the Soviet Union. According to this analysis, the Soviets might have built an experimental drone model capable of flexible control and high speed, designed to scout sensitive U.S. military areas. This hypothesis sounded reasonable, especially amid the rising tensions of the Cold War. In fact, at that time, the Soviet Union had already been developing early jet technologies and experimenting with various unmanned aircraft models, though none were yet perfected. Some experts believed that the object Gorman faced could have been exactly such a prototype. If it was an unmanned aircraft, performing rapid acceleration, sharp turns, and agile maneuvers would not be entirely implausible. This could partly explain the unusual movements and sudden speed changes he described. Very possibly, Gorman might have mistaken this reconnaissance device for a UFO, which made the entire incident appear more dramatic and unbelievable. However, the Soviet technology hypothesis still had many unconvincing points. In 1948, the Soviet Union likely did not yet possess the technical capability to build a small but extraordinarily high-performing flying object like that. Only 2 years later did their advanced jet program truly begin to accelerate. In addition, military experts argued that if the Soviets wanted to test secret technology undetectable by the U.S., they would not need to risk directly intruding into American airspace, a move that carried enormous security and diplomatic risks. As a result, no intelligence documents ever recorded the existence of such a device, making the Soviet technology theory difficult to verify. Once again, all clues led to a dead end, leaving much debate about what Gorman had actually faced in the skies over Fargo that night. And at this very point, another line of reasoning, seemingly the most absurd, emerged. Back in North Dakota, just 10 minutes before Gorman detected the strange object, the Aviation Meteorological Agency had released a weather balloon. This small detail accidentally opened up a surprising hypothesis. During that period, weather balloons were typically made of light reflective material and released at fixed hours to measure atmospheric factors. When viewed from a distance, especially at dusk or under low light conditions, the balloon could reflect sunlight or lights from the ground, creating a bright and unusual appearance. That was exactly why Gorman and the other witnesses all described the object as emitting a strong white light with no engine or tail. The balloon's small size and round shape could also match what Gorman had seen. On the night of the incident, the weather in Fargo was quite calm, and the sky was clear. However, in higher layers of the atmosphere, strong wind currents and thermal vortices could have caused the weather balloon to move rapidly and irregularly. This was what gave Gorman the impression that the object was capable of reacting flexibly, moving as if it were trying to avoid his maneuvers. When he approached, the changing wind direction could have caused the balloon to suddenly change course or accelerate, creating the illusion of a highly maneuverable object. In addition, when a pilot flies at night and looks at an almost stationary object in the distance, the combination of the aircraft's motion and lighting effects can easily cause the human eye to misjudge distance and speed. Under limited visibility, the light from Fargo Stadium below, together with the reflection on the balloon's surface, could have made the object appear to move at high speed, even changing direction continuously. These factors, combined with the complexity of the nighttime atmosphere, made an ordinary weather balloon look identical to a mysterious object. Although the weather balloon hypothesis was considered the most reasonable explanation, it still left many people dissatisfied. Debates continued, focusing on the object's movement and the speed Gorman described. According to him, the object accelerated with an angle and trajectory that were extremely fast and strange, exceeding the capability of any balloon. Some details in his account, such as the object seemingly attempting to attack in return, made the balloon hypothesis even harder to accept. Nevertheless, the U.S. Air Force eventually chose this hypothesis as the official conclusion in Project Blue Book. The dogfight of pilot George F. Gorman in 1948 became one of the most famous UFO encounters of the early Cold War period, marking the beginning of a series of reports and debates that lasted for decades. The event not only attracted public attention, but also compelled military and media agencies to step in. Although the military provided many scientifically based explanations, Gorman's incident remains a vivid mystery in aviation history, and it continues to be an inspiration for many theories that go beyond the framework of traditional science. From a personal perspective, it can be said that Gorman's story was not just a strange phenomenon in the sky, but also a reflection of the limitations of human perception when faced with things that cannot yet be explained. Was the object he saw a sign of extraterrestrial life, or merely a misunderstanding of the technology of that era? Whatever the answer may be, this event still urges us to continue exploring, questioning, and seeking the truth within the vast universe. After the Roswell incident of 1947, it can be said that Gorman's dogfight was one of the cases that made the U.S. government spend the most effort, paperwork, and intellect. Through 3 major UFO research projects, SIGN, Grudge, and Blue Book, we still do not have a truly convincing answer for what happened in the night sky that year. Was it merely human confusion before the very technology we created? Or was there something beyond the understanding of mankind behind it? Will there come a day when science advances further that we can look back and uncover the truth behind this strange aerial battle? Or will that mystery forever drift in the night sky, waiting for those who dare to seek answers, just as Gorman did in 1948? In the future, will you and I ever know the answer? Or will it forever remain on the list of eternal mysteries, where imagination and questions continue to spread from generation to generation? If you found this story fascinating, please press like to support our team in continuing to produce documentary videos about the most mysterious events in history. Share this video with friends who love topics about UFOs, aviation, and unsolved mysteries. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next episodes, where together we will follow the traces of strange phenomena around the world.